Okay, so what do we got here? Eight questions. So first one, how and why did you decide on prosthetics? Well, I decided to get a chip implant because in 2005, I was working in this basement office of a medical clinic, and it had one exit door. It was an emergency exit door. It wasn't meant to go in. It was only meant to go out of. But it was either take that door, which was literally behind me, or I'd have to walk up flights of stairs and all this other stuff. So I would commonly go in and out of that exit door that would always lock when it closed. It never, I couldn't leave it unlocked. It was like an emergency exit only. So um, in using it over and over, I kept leaving my keys in my office, and then I'd have to go all the way around, and that was fine, except when I started working late, then the rest of the building would be alarmed, and I couldn't go out the building. I would have to go in and out of that door, and when I would inevitably leave my keys in the office and leave, and I couldn't start my car because I didn't have my keys, so I would have to call somebody, and they would have to come out after hours and let me in. It was really not an ideal situation. So I said, there's just got to be a way that the door could just know that it's me and let me in. And so I started looking at biometric systems like fingerprint readers or iris scanners, and they were clunky and hard to manage and expensive and not well suited for outdoors. And things really haven't changed too much. I mean, compared to RFID, which is robust, cheap, simple to deploy indoors and out, very cheap and easy to manage, and reliable. It was just, it was kind of like a no-brainer to do some sort of RFID solution, but I didn't want to trade my keys for a card because that just seemed kind of like just changing the type of keys I would carry around. It didn't make any sense. So I started thinking like animals have been getting these things for decades, and that's RFID technology. So I started looking into it, and I decided not to get a pet chip because there's specific reasons. It's coated in parylene for allowing your tissue to grow into it, and I didn't want to do that. It's a particular type of FDXB protocol here in the U.S. anyway. Internationally, there's an ISO standard for it. But anyway, there's just a lot of reasons not to do it. And but I contacted a manufacturer, and they said, "Oh, we have other chips in the same glass ampules, and they're usually used for industrial, processes and things." And I said, "Well, is it the same glass? Is it the same materials?" They said, "Yeah, but don't put it in any animals." And I said, "Well, why not?" And they said, "Because there's certain, it doesn't have the animal standards and won't talk to any animal readers." I said, "Well, I don't care about that." So I got some samples, and I built an access control system based on a very cheap EM4102 reader module that I found online, and kind of the rest is history. So um, the process of deciding, like, how did I decide, was really just what is going to solve my problem here. And like the idea of it being a prosthetic or a chip implant or something that goes in my body versus something that I carry around, it was kind of the point for me that that it wasn't something I had to carry around or manage. It was something I could just put in, forget about, and just use. So it just made perfect sense to me. I didn't really think about it twice. Yeah, so that's it. Number two, how did your life change after getting prosthetics? My immediately it didn't really change much. I just was happy to not have to carry my keys around. I started kind of modifying my door and my car, the things that I would have to use these keys for. And so I found out very quickly that, like, for me, it wasn't just the days where I would lose my keys and then I would be like in a rush or whatever. That would be great if I could just get rid of those days, which I did. But it's also the other days where you're just managing the keys all the time. That is a burden that people are not really aware of, that they take on all the time. They're always like, every time you get up, you check in your coat pocket. Do I have the keys? Do I have everything? Did it fall out of my pocket? Every time you sit down, keys are in the back pocket. Got to move them because it hurts to sit on them. Like, it's just managing them and getting rid of that management process was really great. And then quickly after, people online started to hear about what I did, and then I ended up writing a book called RFID Toys, and then over time, the maker revolution started, and then I started a business in 2013 called Dangerous Things to kind of cater to the biohacker, the emerging maker slash bio, tinkerer. And so, yeah, and I'm here today. So, I mean, it fundamentally changed my life. This is what I do full time now, and I'm running VivoKey and Dangerous Things and developing new cryptographically provable and capable implants. And yeah, so it my life changed a lot. Number 3, describe your day-to-day life, someone with prosthetics. What are your habits and routines? Do these change after prosthetics? How so? My day-to-day is, well, aside from the fact that I'm working in the field now, my day-to-day is just less complex. I use my implants for pretty much every access control scenario, logging into the computer, getting in the door, car, all that stuff. I built some tools that use it and some different things. I have a smart gun that only unlocks the trigger if I present my tag. I have like safes and just other things. So overall, it's just the idea that I am able to kind of offload these tokens that represent me and my identity, keys, cards, things like that, to something that is fundamentally a part of me now. So just me. So I got what I wanted, which is the door of my front door just knows that it's me, lets me in. So yeah, I think my habits, routines, they've changed just in that I'm not managing a bunch of things anymore. I still need my wallet, still need my phone. I'm working on trying to get rid of the wallet, move those functions and features and tokens of my identity into an implant, but that's a much harder process, so we'll see. But I think just the reduction, even by 1/3 of my management burden in a day is significant, so I like that. What have been made possible by prosthetics? What are limitations also created? So what were they? So at this point, no limitations. For a small time, I had a magnet implant in my finger that was used for sensing magnetic fields and playing with magnetic sensors and laptops and things. And that had one limit, which is getting an MRI would have been ill-advised. So, but the magnet is now out, and for the other chips, there really is no limitation that's been introduced. It's only been augmentation. So what's made possible is I have not only digital identity tokens that represent me to various things from my smart gun to my front door, but also now with the VivoKey prototypes that I have, the VivoKey Flex 1 is a prototype of a smart card platform. So it's actually a general computing platform. You can load Java card applets onto it over the air, over NFC, from a phone or a reader. And so the idea that I now have a small computer inside of me that's part of me is very interesting, and that allows a lot more interesting things to happen. Writing of different type of applications like Bitcoin wallets or data encryption, decryption schemes, or one-time code generators, or all kinds of stuff. So it is quite interesting. Number 5, what are the typical reasons of people, such as family, friends, strangers, after seeing your prosthetics? Oh, reactions, sorry. What are the typical reactions? Well, the great thing is that they don't really see them. They see them in action, but they don't really see them on me or in me. So, if I openly and overtly use a chip implant, and it's viewed, I think probably the first time that happened was I had a friend who came to my office, and he saw me use my chip to get into the office to just scan in, and he's like, "What's happening here? What was that?" And that's been kind of that reaction has kind of been the same. Although now we're 14, almost 15 years later, I think society in general has enough awareness about chip implants that the reactions are a bit different. Like, "Oh, you have a chip," or something like that. But if they don't know, then if they see me playing with my phone or something like that, or to scan chip, people just kind of don't understand what's going on. So they just kind of, that's weird. He's rubbing his phone on his hand for. But yeah, I mean, the reaction is very subdued. But if I come right out and I say, "I've got a chip implant, it's right there, let me show it off," and I do that, then the reactions in 2005 were very visceral and negative, usually. Just like, "Ooh, why would you do that? What are you doing? You're crazy." To now, we've had enough exposure societally to this idea that now it's quite benign. It's like, "Oh, you got a chip? Okay, well, that's weird, and good, good for you. I don't want to do it, but good for you." That's typically, a stranger's response. Or, the response might also be, whoa, you got a chip, that's cool, where can I get one, I want one. But, not that visceral reaction. It's really something that has been kind of smoothed over by time and exposure. Number 6, do you feel different after your prosthetics? Absolutely. Probably, I didn't really feel different, but I felt when I used them, it was like almost like magic. I'd like wave my hand and the door would open or something would happen. And that just felt really, really magical. And so I guess the point is that in a very short amount of time, maybe 1 or 2 weeks, I kind of started to forget that it was there. The novelty of playing with it and touching it and realizing that it's something in there had worn off, and the novelty of using it had worn off, though I still feel a bit of that kind of like, this is kind of awesome when I even today when I use it. I used it many times today, and get in the door and stuff. And there's still that sense of like, this is cool. But for me personally, the only thing that really changed about how I felt about myself was that it was just part of my new identity. I have this new capability as a human being. It's not, I didn't feel fundamentally different, but I just felt like it's just now what I do, what are the things that I do or can do. And so I don't know. Maybe it's like learning a new skill, but after you've learned it, you don't really feel all that different. You're just kind of grateful for the ability, and that's it. Number 7. Does your relationship with yourself or other people change? If so, how? No. I mean, not really. It didn't change. With other people, I mean, maybe, but it was only in that short window of like them realizing that I had a chip and that whole aha moment. But outside of that, no, not really. Nothing's really changed. And I think a big part of that is because I look the same. Like you can't tell that right now I have 6 implants. I have 2 products, a couple prototypes, but yeah, like I don't look any different, and that's kind of another part of the intrigue, I think, of this augmentation is a not overt visual or aesthetic augmentation. It's up to me if I want to disclose that I have them even to other people. So number 8, should people voluntarily get prosthetics without medical necessity? Example, replacement of health organs, implantation of chips, augment capabilities. Well, obviously, I think yes, they should. If they're interested in doing so, they should. People get aesthetic augmentations all the time, everything from ear piercings to breast implants. And on the scale of risk, psychological, sociological, just general health risk, infection, a chip implant is at the bottom of all of those things. A chip implant is less risky than an ear piercing because an ear piercing takes many days to heal with this open wound with a piece of metal through it. It takes a very long time to heal, but we don't give it a second thought. Tattoos take a very long time to heal. You have to cover them and be careful with them. They scab over and they do all this stuff. A chip implant, you put it in. It's basically as soon as you have a scab, which is like an hour later, your risk of infection drops to almost nothing. You can take a shower that day or the next day. You can wash your hands. I mean, there's no real risk at that point. So it really isn't. It really, on the scale of everything, psychological risk, you got a new capability that you kind of forget about. I like to say that you have your kidneys are working hard for you, but you don't give them a second thought. And that's exactly how chip is. You put it in, it's frictionless, it's managementless, it just works, it does its job, you forget about it, but you use it. And I'm thankful for my kidneys and I'm thankful for my chips. When it comes to other things like replacement health organs or something, I don't see how a replacement health organ or a replacement of an organ would be done for a reason that wasn't medical necessity. I guess maybe in the future if you wanted to replace an organ with like a heart with a bigger heart with more capacity or something, but that doesn't, it really doesn't make sense. I would probably, if I was to recategorize that question, I would say you might be looking at augmentative treatments like gene therapies that are not medically necessary, but they're meant to augment, extend life, or improve physical performance, or any number of things. So in that scenario, I would say it's probably not a prosthetic at that point, and that it would be more risky, at least right now. But yeah, I mean, if we're sticking strictly with prosthetics, like it's very hard. So I've been asked before, if somebody cut off your, or would you cut off your own arm to get a robot arm, or like prosthetic arm? And there is probably a moment in time that exists well beyond my current lifespan trajectory of an unaugmented, ungenetically modified human. That point in time, a replacement mechanical arm of some sort or prosthetic might perform better than my human arm. And by that I mean better in all respects, meaning sensory, strength, like all that, and also not need management. So my whole design tenet for the chips that we implant and we design and manufacture and sell is that there's no point in having a thing that gives you a little bit of extra capability if it also removes a bunch of other things or is a management burden in and of itself. So, to have a prosthetic arm or something, or a prosthetic eye might be closer to reality, actually. So if we had something that was a prosthetic eye that had all these different thermal imaging capabilities, or different image filters are able to perceive much larger bands than just the small visual that we have, and gave exact or better resolution and clarity and talked to the nervous system directly and didn't need management, it charged itself somehow, like glucose processing or some method or way that it would work better than my human biological eye, work better than a biological eye that could be genetically modified to widen the bandwidth, for example. There's just going to be this kind of trade-off, but I would see probably in terms of organs or body parts, it would be very difficult, I think, to find a replacement that would replace something in my body that wasn't medically necessary, that would actually be worth it for me. If your heart is failing, then sure, get a mechanical heart, and it has all these other downsides. But if my heart's doing fine, or my eye is able to see just fine, but I have an option for mechanical or some other replacement that needed to be charged every night with like some kind of mask that I had to put on, or there's just it's a very difficult question, but I think in general terms, I really doubt there would be a sort of prosthetic replacement for something that was a biological component that was doing just fine biologically that I would think would be worth it. So, hope that makes sense. So, all right, that's it. Thanks.